Heavenly Father, we ask you, Lord, to speak to us through your word. As we wait upon you, we want you to speak to our hearts and enlighten us more. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. 2 days ago, I had an opportunity to speak to some of our believers in Denmark, and I wasn't stationed in Denmark when I was in Germany. I was traveling to Denmark every month to give communion to the people there. And I know all the believers in Denmark, and I know the work also there, the problems there, and I have also labored in Denmark, so I do have my care for the people in Denmark. And so I was talking to them in the course of the conversation. They also told me the promise that they received. Today I'd like to share a bit on the promise they received, the believers in Denmark. And so shall we all turn to their promise today? The promise the believers in Denmark received is Psalm 29, verse 11.
The Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
I had nothing to do with it. This was the promise they were given by their servant of God. And I was truly happy to know that the believers there were given out of the entire Bible. This was the verse chosen and given to them. The Lord will give strength unto his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. We've been hearing in the days past how we can receive strength from God. In the world, when we speak of strength, it is something we have to attain through hard work. To be big is to be strong. And to be educated is to be strong. To be talented is to be strong. To be popular these are all different kinds of strength that people enjoy. We all love to be strong. But today, I want to show you something which is quite opposite of strength, and yet we learn so much about how we can live in the church and be as a family and have strength, because God has chosen this particular teacher for us. So let us turn to Proverbs chapter 30 and read verse 24 and verse 25.
There be 4 things which are little upon the earth, but they are exceeding wise. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer.
It is little, but exceeding wise. This is scripture, this is the word of God. 4 small creatures that are very wise, of which the first is the ant. Today we are studying about the ant. The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. Why did God choose this little creature to be our teacher? Well, let's allow this little fellow to teach us today. Ants are found worldwide, but are especially common in hot climates. They're usually yellow, brown, red, or black. Most ants, they live in nests. And these nests may be located in the ground or under a rock or built above the ground or made of twigs or sand or gravel. And these ants live together. Now, we all know different kinds of ants. Do you know the different kinds of ants? Well, we know small ants, big ants, medium ants, red ants, black ants, and then? Well, there are a few kinds of ants. I'll put up their names, but this is just how much I could fit there. And these are some of the well-known ant species. There are some species we don't know. These are some of the well-known species, as you can see it on the screen. These are the species. They are the driver ants, the army ants, the white ants, carpenter ants, fire ants, thief ants, leaf-cutting ants, pharaoh ants, weaver ants, red ants, slave-making ants, velvet ants, tailor ants, harvester ants, honey ants, and Argentine ants. let's get introduced to our little friend. These are some of the well-known species of ants. Now, ants are a creature very, very, very small. Small creature. How small? They range from 0.1 to 1 inches long. That's how tiny an ant is. So tiny with your great big foot, you can crush it, squash it, and kill it. That's how tiny it is. Now, before you can kill it, why don't you sit down and say, can I learn from you? Because your ant is your teacher. It is so light, it weighs only about 30 milligrams. And the brain of an ant weighs only 0.1 milligrams. The brain is small, but as you can see in the picture of an ant, the head of an ant is big. Now, its brain is small. Now, large heads and small brains. Now that's about the only thing we share in common with ants. Some of you don't get jokes. I don't understand why. What language do I have to spell it out? I don't like to explain it. You expect to understand it. Let me say it again. One of the only qualities, well, I should say the only quality we share with the ant is that we have large heads and small brains. But the brain of an ant functions much better than our brains. In 2001, researchers in Zurich, Switzerland, they came to a fantastic discovery about ants, and they said that the ant can perform advanced maths in its brain. So advanced, it's almost like it has a computer in its head. An ant so tiny has a computer in its head. Just think of that creature so small before you and see how wise it is. There is so much we in the New Testament that we can learn from this little creature. So small, yet so brilliant. There is no human being in the world who has enough wisdom to compete with an ant in any area. So clever is every ant. But there's more. The Bible teaches us about the ant, which is so good for and healthy for our spiritual lives. If you turn to Proverbs chapter 6. Now this is for the lazy ones. Proverbs chapter 6. You read 6 to 10.
Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be
read
wise.
Verse 11 or 6 to 11. Yeah.
Which having no guide, overseer or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travelleth, and thy want as an armed man.
How many of you sleep 8 hours in the night? How many of you came late today for the meeting because you couldn't get out of your beds? The Bible calls you a sluggard. A sluggard, a slothful, a lazy buffalo. And you don't know that you are crawling down the path to destruction. And God is telling you, go to the ant. Don't let the ant come to you. Today the ant has come to teach you, but you should go to the ant, you lazy fellow. Go to the ant and observe her ways. If you observe the ways of the ant, you will be wise. But some of us don't know about the ant, so I'm going to present to you some of the amazing things about the ants. It's not exhaustive. Some things that I would share with you about the ant. Here, we read about the ant that she provides her meat in the summer in verse 8. She provides her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. Ants do not lay up for winter, as some of us believe. We think they are laying up for winter. No, they are not laying up for winter. They gather it in summer. They provide the meat in summer and gather it in the harvest. And what do? In winter? In winter they hibernate. They go to sleep. It's a sleep from which they will not wake up. Now what is this summer spiritually? Summer spiritually speaks of the grace period. It's the time that we are living in. And in the time when we are living in, the ant will not sleep. The ant will work very hard, extremely hard. I will share that with you a little later. In this period of grace, if you choose to be a lazy man, you will perish. But you go and consider the ant and see how hard the ant works. You will learn so much from the ant. What does winter speak of? Winter speaks of the tribulation period. Summer speaks of the period of grace in which we are, but winter speaks of the tribulation period. That is why in Matthew's Gospel chapter 24, verse 20, what does Jesus say? Matthew 24, 20 and 21.
But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be.
Pray that your flight be not in the winter, because then will be great tribulation. What does this winter speak of spiritually to us? Literally, of course, it's a prophecy of the tribulation. But spiritually, what is it to be in winter or be in a cold state? To be in a cold state is that the warmth of God's love has left you and you are in a winter in your life. Now, pray that your flight be not in the winter. Pray that Jesus does not come when you are in a winter of your life. Many of us, we enjoy the different states, the seasons in our Christian life. Some of you today are in your winter. You are spiritually cold. You're not able to feel the warmth of God's love. The fire is not burning in your hearts. If Jesus comes while you are in the winter, that means you belong to the tribulation period. That is why we do not belong to winter. We should not be cold. In Proverbs chapter 20, the sluggard, the lazy man, is compared to the cold. And what does he do in the cold? Proverbs 24.
The sluggard will not plough by reason of the cold. Therefore shall he beg in harvest and have nothing.
We say it is too cold and therefore I can't. In our spiritual life, when we become cold, then we lose the heat, the fire, the zeal for God, and we are not able to live according to what the Lord tells us. We do not want to be in this winter, but we want to be in the summer of our Christian life. Those who are caught up when Jesus comes, they are the ants. What will they be doing during winter, during the tribulation period? According to the Bible, during the tribulation period, like ants, we will be hibernating. In Isaiah chapter 26, verse 20, we read about the bride, a prophecy about the bride of Jesus during the tribulation period. Isaiah 26:20. What will the bride be doing during the tribulation period?
Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself as it were for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast.
That little moment is 7 years of tribulation. For those 7 years, the bride of Jesus will be resting with him. That is the time she enters into her rest. Now she will not rest. Do not rest, my people, says God. We must not rest. Spiritually we must enjoy rest, but physically we must continue to seek God without giving up or without going into a sleep. Those who do not rest in their prayer life, they also will not give God any rest. They will continue to trouble the Lord through their prayer. And we read about them in Isaiah chapter 62. Isaiah chapter 62 tells us about the bride. And she will never sleep. What does she do? In verse 6 and verse 7, they are called watchmen on the walls.
I have set watchmen upon thy walls, O Jerusalem, which shall never hold their peace day nor night. Ye that make mention of the Lord, keep not silence, and give him no rest.
And give him no rest. They are not resting, and they will give him no rest. What does that mean? It's not that they're going to trouble him and trouble him. No. It is that night and day, they'll be taking their burdens to the Lord. They will be crying to the Lord. They will be burdened about their own spiritual lives. Many believers are not worried about their spiritual lives. How many of you are not worried about your spiritual life today? How many can say, I'm not worried? I'm not saying you have to be overburdened and you must be discouraged. That's not what I'm saying. But you must have a concern about your spiritual life. That you are in a winter. I don't feel I'm progressing. I don't feel any growth. I am growing in the world, in worldly knowledge. Spiritually, I am stagnant. There must be a worry, a concern in your life. If there is no concern, be concerned about that lack of concern. Here, we see they are giving him no rest until
he establish and till he make Jerusalem a praise in the earth.
Till he makes Jerusalem a praise in this world. Now that is a prophecy of the millennium. That is the day when Jerusalem will become established in this world and will be praised. Today, Jerusalem is being persecuted. The height of its persecution is at the end of the seals, when the battle of Armageddon takes place. And after that, Jerusalem will become a praise. So spiritually, we are also longing for that. And so we will continue to pray. Pray for one another. Pray for the church. Pray for the servants of God. We must have laboring ants in our midst, who are not sluggards, who are not in the winter, but they are in the summer of their life laboring. And in verse 1, the Lord himself says, For
Zion's sake will I not hold my peace, and for Jerusalem's sake I will not rest.
Praise the Lord. God himself is saying, for such people, I will not rest. Meaning, I'm not going to sit quietly. Because these people are crying to me day and night, I am going to fight for them. I will not remain quiet. I will not rest, but I will fight for them. Many of you in your testimonies, you were saying how God took you through various trials. God takes us through various trials. As we heard in the Bible study this morning, every trial is planned by God's love. He's taking us through these trials to change our character, to mold us as we surrender to God. God is making us His bride, and God says, for Jerusalem's sake and Zion's sake, I will not rest. We are called to be laboring ants. So let us not be sluggards, but let us be laboring ants. Let's go back to Proverbs chapter 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, and consider her ways, and be wise. And there's something more about the ant which you must understand. Only then you will appreciate verse 7. Proverbs chapter 6 says, ants have no guide, no overseer or ruler. Now, just imagine if we had no leaders, no one to guide us, what will the state of the church be? Wherever there is a group, there must be a guide. There must be someone to guide. Otherwise, there will be chaos and confusion. What happens in a church if there is no guidance? There will be absolute confusion. We need servants of God to guide us, to lead us. But ants, they have no guide, no overseer, no ruler. There's no one person to tell the ants what to do. I know, I've observed even in churches where there are no leaders, there are so many problems. I know of a church where there may be only 10 or 15 believers. And I was one day sent to that church. It was not like a church, it was like a little family gathering. A little room of 3 families and then 2 or 3 individuals. Have you ever been in a church like that? 3 families. How sweet. And of the 3 families, half is children. So really if you talk of adults, there must have been about 5 or 6 adults. I said, I'm so happy to be in a church so small. You know why? The bigger the church, the more the problems, isn't it? Put more people together, that's the formula for problems. Now, just 3 families. So when I landed there, I said, I'm so happy to be here in a church so small with no problems. And they looked at me like I was speaking Greek. No problem. Brother, you stay here for 1 month, you'll know what's happening here. I said, problems? By the time I left there, I'll tell you, one of the worst assemblies. So many problems. Just 3 families. How many families does it take to have problems? 1. That's who we are as human beings. If we don't have a leader to tell us to obey, command us, then we disobey, we rebel. It's true even among workers. When we were in our first year, we hardly have time to sleep and we have to do all the hard work. So I remember in India when we were in our first year training, we had a pastor. His name was Pastor John Paul. He's now a center pastor. And we were all very afraid of him, a very strict pastor. Well, he had to be because we were in our training period. So we were all being trained into soldiers. So every afternoon we had a Bible study. So what happened was, he would be about 20 minutes late for the Bible study. So amongst ourselves we had an agreement. And he doesn't know about it. And if he does know about it, probably he'll forgive me now. It's about 15 years since I was trained under him. And we had an agreement. We would appoint one brother to sit at the door and to let us know when he's coming. We can see him coming in a distance. And then we would all go to sleep. We would all stretch out and go to sleep. And then of course those who are not sleepy, we would be laughing and joking and all this. And suddenly from the door we get a signal. In about 15 or 20 seconds he would be marching into the room. And there we would be all sitting and reading our Bibles as very good students. Now that's a very bad thing I'm telling you about us. In our first year we were like that. That is called being without grace, being under the law. We need someone to watch us and warn us. And the moment that overseer is gone, we all get back to our old lives. Now that is how human beings are. But ants, they have no guide. They have no one to oversee or watch over them. They have no ruler. But think of the amazing things you have heard and the amazing things you're going to hear without anything. But here is something most amazing about these ants. Some of you may have already known about it. Some of you may not know about it. But this is the truth about the ant. Now, first of all, we heard about how small they are. But listen to the next truth about the ant. Ants are blind. Even if they had an overseer, they couldn't see him. Ants have no eyes, and yet these creatures are fantastic. Without the benefit of a boss, a foreman, or a superintendent, they accomplish so much. Though they are blind, they do so much work. In fact, they labor so hard, they work even more hard than the bee. The bee itself cannot compete. Ants are blind, but they work very, very hard. They are hard workers. Ants are known to work without rest. It has been observed that they hardly sleep. Even if they stop moving, they're not sleeping, they're only resting. And it has been observed that an ant is working every 13 minutes. Every 13 minutes an ant gets to work. How many of us can survive with a sleep of 13 minutes per day. God is speaking to us, not man. He says, go to the ant and learn from the ant. We may think, I need 10 hours. That's because we think we need 10 hours, and still, after sleeping for 10 hours, we are still sleepy. Isn't that true? Some people sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep, and they're so tired of sleeping. Oh, I need some rest. See, we are making ourselves such terrible creatures. Of course, it's a blessing to sleep. We become a less problem to people in the house. But look at the ant, how little it sleeps. Then, an ant can carry, every ant, not one or special ant, any and every ant can carry weight like an Olympic weightlifter. Can you believe every ant is like an Olympic weightlifter? An ant can carry 5 times its own body weight. Think of, say, okay, Brother Alex, he's tall, he's got big arms. Now, you can think of Brother Alex coming into the meeting and he's lifting Brother Bruno in his hands. To think of that is impossible. But just think that above Brother Bruno, Brother Joy sits on top. And then sitting on Brother Joy is Brother Don. Sitting on Brother Don is Brother Saji. And sitting on top of all of them is me. And Brother Alex is carrying them. Just imagine, that is the strength of a normal ant. An ordinary ant has so much strength. And it can carry 300 times its weight, dragging it. It can drag 300 times its weight. So it's Brother Alex pulling the entire congregation of believers in the Brixton Assembly. He holds them in one hand and he pulls all of them. That is the strength of an ant. And if you compare them to a marathon runner, an ant can run a marathon and win while carrying an entire sack of potatoes. Carrying an entire sack of potatoes, it can still win. That is how an ant works. And if there is a need, an ant can travel non-stop for 3 days. It can travel non-stop for 3 days, and it has seen that if they come across a big pond, they have to work their way to the other side. And there is no other side. They cannot go around the pond. What do the ants do? It has been observed that the ants will create a bridge made of leaves and themselves. The ants themselves will become a bridge so that others can climb over them. It is a living bridge. What a sacrifice. Who taught them to do it? Who stands and says, all right, can you put up your hand? Who is willing to be a bridge? Here, even if we ask you to put up your hand, you always back off. Oh, please don't ask me. Ask someone else. Oh, please give me some notes. We are always wanting extra help. But the ant, no guide, no overseer, no ruler, and blind, and so small. And yet they seem to know. They seem to know there's a pond in front. Somebody has to become a sacrifice. They straight away offer themselves and become a sacrifice. Now let's get a little closer and observe the ant a little closely. The ants have antennae, and a close-up view will tell us about the antennae of the ants, that each 2 antennae that they have are each covered in millions of hairs, and they have sensory pits that are alive to smells and vibration and touch. Now the ants have 2 sets of jaws. The outer pair is used for carrying objects such as food and for digging, and the inner pair is used for chewing. The ants, they eat both plants and animals. Now, about their jaws, well, let me first finish something about the jaws of the ants. Now, as soon as they come to a place where there is food, what do the ants do? They don't straightaway say, oh, there's food. Some believers, the moment they smell the food, they start eating. Some can't wait. But the ants, when they come across good food, what do? They don't eat it straight away. What they do is, they stash away their food in the nest until all the ants have arrived. Only when all have arrived. I remember I was in a certain assembly, and we were having brothers' prayers in that assembly, and then the sisters were kind enough and said, these 10 or 15 brothers are coming. Can we make something for the brothers to have as a snack? Of course, I said, that's fine. Brothers, when they get together, one thing they love to do is to eat. Because we talk better when we eat. So, there was a snack given. It was arranged and kept in the nearby room. And then I said, okay, you all take in one by one. So the first brother went, and he took one, and he took two, and he took three, and he took four, and he took five, and I said, look, there are only 15 pieces, and you have taken about 7, and I had to actually stop him. Later I came to know, they said, be careful about this brother, he eats food. When he comes to food, he can't stop himself. He'll eat and eat and eat and eat. Food, he's only thinking of himself. Sometimes in our homes also it's like that. We can think only of ourselves. We don't think of others. But look at the ant. The ant, all parents must learn this. The ant, it does not straight away eat. It will take the food, put it away in the nest, and wait for the family to arrive, and then it will eat together. And the interesting thing about this is, there are some ants whose jaws are so large that they can't eat. The jaws don't close to eat. They meet halfway in the air and they can't close to eat. So, what do? They are spoon-fed by smaller ants. Look at the cooperation among the ants. Even that is in a family. You may find a person who is weak in your house. Elderly, the person is not able to eat a certain kind of food. Immediately the other helps. Can you see this beautiful relationship? When one can't eat, what does the other do? The other should help. We cooperate with one another so that the weak one is helped. Sometimes we make the weak one become strong like us. You cooperate with me. But that is not how it is in the ant. But look at this beautiful relationship. It doesn't end there. The smaller ones will spoon feed the bigger ant. But remember, the food is caught by the bigger ant. The one with the large jaws will find the food, grab the food, and will find an opening in the prey. In that animal, maybe a worm or a slug or a cockroach, finds the food, finds an opening, but it is so small it can't go in. Then what happens? The little one will come again, go in there. So there's a constant cooperation between the big ones and the little ones. What about our homes? Is there a cooperation between the big ones and the little ones? Sometimes it's not a cooperation. There's a constant struggle. There's constant altercation, arguments. When I was at home, I told you we were 2 brothers, and my parents, they tried to help us so that, we help it in the housework. So 2 parents, 2 siblings, meal times, there were 4 plates. And one day my mother asked me, can you help? Can you help in the kitchen work? Can you put away the plates? I said, yes, I'll help, Mom. So I went to the kitchen with 2 plates. And she said, what about the other 2? Tell him. 50-50. And she said, but why can't you bring 4? After all, you brought 2. I said, but that's not fair. 50-50, Mom. 50-50. I bring 2. then he takes 2. She said, but why can't you just bring 4? I said, it's not fair. You're making me do everything. Not fair. That's why it's good not to have 2 children. Isn't it? It's terrible when we start thinking 50-50. A true aunt will do everything without leaving it for the others. If the children are arguing among themselves, take the children and put them into a nest of ants. First let them be bitten, then let them learn. See, this is what we must learn about the smaller ones. They cooperate with the bigger ones. And when an ant finds a prey, what does she do? She releases a chemical alarm signal. She releases that signal, and within seconds, hundreds will join the attack. And the ants are known to follow these chemical trails even for a whole day. That is how they cooperate with each other. What do we read in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2 about how we should be within a family or within a church? Galatians chapter 6, verse 2.
Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ.
We must bear one another's burdens. That is the law of Christ. We must bear the other person's burden. How many of you are burden bearers? In order to become burden bearers, what do we need? What do we need? Grace. We need burdens. So some members in the family, they become burdens, that we might be burden bearers. Bear ye one another's burdens. And I've got 2 sisters in my faith home. And quite often I've seen them arguing, but please, I have to tell you this because I don't want them to argue. But they've just landed, and 1 month they are almost every other day they argue in the faith home. I know they can't stop me from saying this because I'm preaching. But this is how they argue. Today I'm going to wash up, you go and sleep. And the other will say, no, I'm going to wash up, you go and sleep. And they're arguing like this every day. So, we also should be like that. We must try to bear the burden of the other. I will do the work, you go and rest. You are weak, I am strong. We must bear one another's burdens. In our homes, that is how we should be. Some husbands, they want the wives to do everything. I know in the Indian culture, husbands, they feel that they are higher in every way. But when we come to the West, sometimes we keep that Indian culture of being, I am higher. My wife is the inferior creature. Poor woman, she may be working night and day, but still she is the inferior creature. Some husbands say, she has to cook. She has to do all the cooking. Even though I can cook, I don't want to go to the kitchen. That's not my work. I will wait for the food. Let her bring the food. You see, your pride is very great. Any husband must be willing to help the wife in even the housework. There is a cooperation, there is an understanding. As I told you, they had the survey in Britain, and they found much of the fights and quarrels in a family home is about housework, about putting the bin out, about clothes lying around. That's the number one problem. Clothes lying around. And so much of contention in the house. If only we had this little principle of the ants, where little ones and big ones help one another to keep the house in peace. In addition, the ants, they live always together in organized colonies, and they work only in swarms, and the swarms number several millions. This makes the ant the largest single family on the planet. The largest single family on the planet. But they are so organized. Millions of ants together. Can you imagine a church of 1 million people? Forget 1 million, just a few thousands. When I was in the Madras convention many years ago, many thousands come for the convention. You can hardly see the preacher in the front. and a little ring of white. There are about 1,000 servants of God there. And those who are right at the back, it's like they don't belong to that convention. If you go right up to the front, you feel the heat of the presence of God. You go to the back of the place, you feel the cold of the absence of God. There they sit together. One man will be wearing his lungi. The other man will be opening a banana and eating it. Another person will be lying flat and sleeping. They'll be eating popcorn. They'll be fighting. They'll be having their little lovely time together. When? Sunday morning service going on. Bring 1 million people together and forget it. This is how man is. But look at an ant. 1 million ants together, and yet every ant knows what to do. This is how they cooperate. They do everything together. In our Christian life, there's a lot we have to do together as a church. We have to pray together. We have to fellowship together. But some people don't know how to fellowship with others. They are by themselves. They cannot mingle with others. They cannot communicate with others. We must always work together. We must pray together. We do everything as a church. We function as a church. And among the ants, there are males, there are queens, there are workers, and there are also another kind of an ant called the soldier ant. The soldier ant is the largest, and it's about 1/2 inch long, and like all the workers, she has no eyes. She's totally blind. It's because of her 2 antennae that she finds her way around. Why is she called a soldier ant? Her job is to protect her colonies. Her jaws are so powerful they can slice through a victim's skin like knife through butter. Powerful jaws. Her brain may be tiny, but she works very hard. When it comes to ant wars, when ants and termites have wars, the soldier ants are willing to lay down their lives to save the other ants. It's a sacrificial spirit among the soldier ants, willing to die for the others. And the queen ant is, of course, the largest ant of all. She is the size of a baby mouse. She lives about 15 to 20 years and produces about 25,000 eggs at a time, and millions of eggs in a few days. And of course we understand that this is also something that we must have. Unless the church grows, the church will die. There are 2 ways in which a church must grow. One, we must grow in quality. It doesn't matter if the church is few in number, even if now I was in one particular place, in 3 years we had 1 new soul. Of course I was very sad about it. I shared this burden with my leaders. We did plenty of evangelism. We divided the believers in 3 groups, in 3 different places, and every month we had 3 organized times of tract distribution. We distributed millions of tracts. We had special meetings, special prayers in different places in Germany. In Bonn, the erstwhile capital of Germany, and in Leverkusen, in Düsseldorf, in Mönchengladbach, in all these places we had tract distribution, distributed millions of tracts. In the end we had 1 soul, just 1 soul. At least we labored for the souls. But a church must labor for souls. We must get souls. So you must labor, become a soul winner, and bring souls to the presence of God. A church must grow in number. At the same time, a church must grow in quality. Every believer must register a spiritual growth. And one more thing about the ant that I want to say. Probably no insect is more fondly attached or more careful of its young ones than the ant. It has been observed that when the ants are in their Aurelia state, meaning that they are just babies, very tiny, just about a grain of rice, what do the bigger ants do? They will carry them gently and bring them to the mouth of the nest and leave them there so they can have the benefit of the sun. But the moment it begins to rain, they will rush, go lift them and carefully deposit them somewhere near the entrance and then cover them with a thin stone or a tile, preventing them from getting wet. This attachment to the little one, this love for the little one, is also a beautiful quality of the ant. And this is something I've observed really lacking amongst many parents. Many parents are very careful about correcting their children, warning their children, but they have no love. Let me tell you one thing. Where you correct your child and you don't love your child, you are losing your child. You will know the damage only later. It is good, you must correct. We had a message about correction, how important it is to correct a child. But if you had listened carefully, many parents, they deleted the aspect of loving the child, they removed that. And they began to sharpen their knives. Oh, thank God for that message. I was waiting for something like that. Right now, I'm going to correct you. Anything you do, you're looking funny. You're smiling wrong. Everything, knife, 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 knife. I never gave you the license to do that. If you don't love your child, you are losing your child. There must be a beautiful relationship between the parents. If you're a mother and you have a son or a daughter, some mothers, they love their sons, but they don't love their daughters. Some fathers, they love their daughters, they don't love their sons. But we must love them both. We must love them and correct them. Not all children are the same. Some children are naturally good. Some children are naturally rebellious. Naturally, they have problems. But we must still love them. Now, love is not just a word. In love, there is a relationship. The child must feel that love. Don't just say, my love is spiritual. You won't feel it. You will never know how much I love you until you go to heaven. But mommy, what's the point of knowing you love me when I go to heaven? Can I feel it now more than knowing it then? So let us show that love for our children. There must be a relationship, there must be a care. A true father or a true mother will also be a friend to the child. You will care for your little one, and the child will grow close to you, and the child will love. Some mothers, they care for the children, but they have only a spiritual care. They may pray for their children. I'll pray 5 hours a day for my child. But they won't have any care. See, care is not only spiritually. Care must also be in physical things. What does James tell us? James chapter 2, verse 15 and 16.
If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding ye give them not those things which are needful to the body, what doth it profit?
In a modern translation, if a brother or a sister, or let it bring it down to the situation, if your child is having a problem, maybe your child is not having enough clothes. As I told you, sometimes parents are dressed better than the children. That itself shows the family something is wrong. Something is wrong, the balance is wrong. Children are not dressed properly, but the parents are all the time getting new clothes, but the children are not dressed properly. Something is wrong. If a child is not having enough food to eat, a child comes home and is looking around, there's no food in the house, something is wrong. You are not providing food, something is wrong. What are you doing? Instead you're saying, be warm, be filled. In the modern translation, I'll pray for you. Your prayer is useless. Your spiritual care is useless. If you cannot do the physical things, forget the spiritual things. You are not kept in the house to be a father, to teach and teach and teach and teach and teach. You must care for your child. You must provide for your child. You're not a mother only to pray and instruct and correct. You must love, care. Look at your child. Does my child have enough to eat? Oh, my child doesn't have enough. I must provide. My child doesn't have enough to wear. I must provide. That is the character of the ant. The love for the little one. As we study the qualities of the ants, we see the New Testament church is so much like the ant. One day I was at home when I was a little boy, and I used to always study ants. And there were plenty of ants crawling all over the house where I lived, apart from the termites. Now these ants were a blessing. They wouldn't harm us or anything. And I used to do my little research. I'm not going into all the details now. But one particular thing I noticed about the ant. Sometimes you find these big black ants or red ants, they will crawl down the rail of the balcony on the first floor, and I would stand and watch them. And they crawl. They seemed to know what they were doing, and as they crawl down, I did something which is cruel. I didn't kill the ant, but I thought, what would happen if I sent him down to the ground floor? So I knocked him off the rail. Ants don't have wings. But I don't know how he landed. It was smooth sailing, like as though he was paragliding. He didn't go crashing down. He landed. I saw him landing slowly. And then he landed. And guess what happened as the moment he landed? What happened? He didn't look up and say, I love you for whatever you're doing to me. He didn't say all that. Do you know what happened? He didn't stop there and say, Father, forgive them. I can't believe what they're doing to me. Okay, I have to bear it. No, that's not what the ant did. You know what the ant did? As soon as he landed, I was shocked. As soon as he landed, he was walking. He just walked like nothing happened. It's as though he went down a lift or something. He just kept walking. I said, how can that be? So I called another ant. I said, excuse me, what's your name? He said, James. I said, good. Now James, you're going to land, alright? I gave him a knock. He went right down to the ground, and James went after John. It looks like they all seemed to know what they were doing. So beautiful. And I thought, what is this quality? And I found it in the Bible. In Acts chapter 8, I found this quality of the ants. Acts chapter 8, in verse 1, you find me.
And Saul was...
that's me, okay? Yeah, Saul.
And Saul was consenting unto his death. And at that time there was a great persecution against the church which was at Jerusalem.
Great persecution of the ants, yes.
And they were all scattered abroad.
Yes, that's what I was doing. Knocking them, scattering them.
Abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles.
Yeah, I was scattering all the ants. Now read verse 4.
Therefore, they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word.
You see what is happening in the first church? They were all in a home. They were all in a home, happy and secure. Persecution arose. What happened? Father and mother were separated. Children and parents were separated. They were all scattered. Families were broken up, scattered. If this church is scattered, if you're all scattered, and you are separated, and you're all scattered, what would you do? What happened? Those who were scattered and they were sent away to some place, wherever they landed, they carried on as though nothing happened, like the ant. Wherever they landed, they carried on. When persecution arises, as you know, persecution is going on currently in Nigeria. They are being not only scattered, they're being shattered, but they still carry on as if nothing is happening. Their love for Jesus is still remaining the same. Their attitude to God, to one another is still the same. Let us not lose our love for God when we are persecuted. When people shatter us or scatter us, let us not change. Let our love remain the same. Let us not think about what others are doing. Let us only think about what we have to do for Jesus. Let us learn from the ant. The ant may be a tiny creature, a little creature, but this little creature has so much to teach us. Jesus is coming soon for those who are like the ant. They tirelessly work without thinking of themselves. They carry on doing what the Lord has instructed them to do. When Jesus comes, these tiny ants, they will be ready to fly away to meet their Maker. Let us all, therefore, be small like the ant and gain the strength of the ant. Yes, that is how we can receive the strength that the Lord has promised us this year. Shall we stand?